Hello, everybody, and welcome to Two Geeks and One Noob, where we gather friends of similar interests and maybe not so similar and discuss, joke, learn more about, and generally have fun with geek culture. Today, our topic is about robot movies. What do you guys think?
Transformers.
More than meets the eye.
I love robot movies, especially like Transformers. Like those are movies that always turn my brain off and just sit down and watch. And they're fun movies, good action sequences. I'm not looking for those to be thinking hard or any prize winning performances. I just want stupid action and robots fighting. Like that's what I'm looking for.
Absolutely.
When you think about it, most robot movies don't really have these like award-winning performances for the most part, even if they do have bigger name actors in them. But they're just fun movies to kind of sit around, watch, turn your brain off, and just have a relaxing day. And it's not like trying to watch The Batman. It's like, oh, I missed 4 seconds. I have no idea what's happening.
Right. And the fact that the movies came from just
A toy line
was just amazing because they created this whole, not a genre, but a whole series off of it.
It built a large fan base because coming from toys into the old cartoons that some of us watched when we were kids to movies and so on, like it's blew up a lot more than I think they may have expected. It's kind of the He-Man effect. Like it started with a toy line and people got onto it and they're like, oh, we may actually have something here.
Yeah.
People actually like this and want this.
Yep. And then, things like Transformers and like iRobot and things like that, where there's the transforming side of things where it's just big, monstrous robots going after each other. But then they go and do a little bit more AI sort of things where they take over the world, that or Terminator.
Well, I think whenever you start getting into the AI side, it's more of a cerebral. It's a thought experiment that has been turned into entertainment.
Right.
So, like Terminator is a prime example of that intersection between the two, where it's a great series. It's a fun series because the first 3 are. But it's a cool concept. But there's really a lot of thought behind this. It's this thought experiment of, hang on, what if we do create something that's smarter than ourselves?
Yeah.
And then you get concepts like Asimov's iRobot, which movie's good, movie's enjoyable. It hits a lot of the main points, especially on the thoughtful side of things. But the book goes into a bit more detail on that, and I highly recommend it as a good read for anybody. But understand it is not going to be the singular, coherent story that the movie is.
Yeah. So, question being, what are some of your guys' favorite robot movies other than Transformers?
We touched on Pacific Rim in a previous episode and always enjoy a good monster fight. So that's something I always have fun with. Even thinking about like the egg drones from the Sonic movies. I thought those were done really well. And I mean, the Sonic movies are just a marvel considering the history of gaming to movie transition.
Yeah, and they're just fun. They're just a fun movie to watch.
Yeah. And I would argue like with Star Wars as well, just the different battle droids that they fight throughout the prequel trilogy, especially like the Droidica. Oh, yeah. Always been a fun design.
Well, that and also to hit on the Star Wars point, the fact that most of the droids have their own personality.
Yeah.
But if they're built for one purpose, then they all have the same collective personality. Mm-hmm. It's kind of this fun little thing to key in on.
Yeah. When they even like expand on some of the droid personalities in the Clone Wars TV show, which I won't dive too much into, but like being able to see some of their personalities, like you're flying a ship into the hangar and they see the enemy ship coming in and they're just like, oh, I'm dead. It's just like these personalities and like that was what we got to see a little bit of with Transformers, the most recent movies, being able to see some personalities for the characters, and then even with Sonny and iRobot, seeing his personality and like seeing that he was able to like kind of critically think, or even K2SO's personality of like, do not resist, you are being rescued.
Yeah, kind of to touch on the iRobot, Sonny being a little bit more advanced on that, with he almost having like a what's the word I'm looking for, a copy of human emotion. where
Where it's almost bridging the uncanny valley.
kind of, yeah, where they're just like, he can just, he can dream, he almost loved his maker, called him father,
Yeah.
and had that relationship with him.
Well, even to the point of expressing anger.
Right.
And like being able to show various emotions, while it may not have been to the same extent as a human, being able to like get angry and be like, "No, you're lying. That's not accurate," and like slamming his fist on the table, like
Simulation. That's the word I was trying to think of. But yeah, he was simulating those emotions to the best of what he knew that they were.
Yeah.
or it's like a toddler that has an insane amount of emotion, like still trying to figure out, okay, what is this emotion? How do I handle this emotion? How does it work?
And almost taking the emotion out to
having
play with it
such
just to
a
figure that out.
Yeah.
Wide range of actual knowledge on top of that.
Yeah.
And then the danger that can come with that as well. And
Yep.
yeah.
Rather than the concept of, it's mechanical, it's programmed for one thing, or it's programmed for these set parameters, and then you see that in Terminator where they're designed for one thing. Fighting.
Yeah. They're designed for fighting, and then the one that kind of veers off of that, but still keeps fighting.
Right.
Like they're there to kill that
The
particular
goal
person.
of the fight may change, but they're still
Right.
in
Fighting.
the fight.
Yeah.
Right. Or like the very comic scene of the awkward smile in Terminator 2.
Right.
But I mean, just kind of that concept though of programmed entities, because it's difficult to call them beings, but programmed entities being
Sentient.
being sentient, or even mimicking sentience like Sonny, or trying to come up with their own, not come up with their own, but realizing the extent of their sentience.
Yeah.
So like Bicentennial Man.
Oh yeah.
Very, very different take on it. And that's one to keep the tissues handy if you haven't seen it. And not just so you can put a little boogie in it.
That was definitely one that I used to love watching growing up, because it was number one. I love Robin Williams. So he did a fantastic job of being a robot, but then also transitioning into being human, or the best possible way he could become human. The closest he could come to being human. Learning how to love and learning how to protect like his family and stuff like that. It definitely had a lot in it that was very enjoyable. On the transition side of that, with being the opposite side of that being things like Terminator and I'm trying to think of. Oh, actually, no. Sorry. The same side of that being something like Baymax in Big Hero 6 or Iron Giant,
Yeah.
where they learn to protect, and even though that wasn't necessarily their original programming, like Baymax, where he was a doctor first, basically, or a nurse.
Are you satisfied with your care?
I am satisfied with my care. Goodbye. But yeah, then going into protection mode of like, yeah, no, I care about.
Yeah.
Well, it's always interesting to see how they have the how they make that transition, because it's always done a little bit differently. Like with Baymax just being the programming chip that was placed into him, changing his focus where he's not only medical, but he's also like got the fighting ability, and then just removing the medical side of it and him going full on warrior with the mindset. And then also like looking at Iron Giant, where he crashed onto Earth, and that bump like threw off his programming, and so he's like just became a big friendly robot.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And wasn't it something where he was actually not thrown to Earth, sent to Earth to destroy? Like that was his original programming, was to come to Earth and just like rampage.
Yeah, I mean he was because he was like, even when we saw him get angry and just go into fight mode and all of the like weapons and stuff that popped out, and it's just like, oh, he is not a friendly robot. He pretended to be friendly, but that was not the purpose. The idea of the like programming going off or them surpassing their programming
Yeah.
has always been an interesting one. We even see it in things like an anime with Android 17 and 18 as like their focus was supposed to be defeat Goku, and they pop up like, nah, teenage angst, not gonna do it.
Yeah. Actually, now that you mention that, I find it interesting how a lot of the robot stories revolve around teens. Where it's that coming of age for the teen, but then most of the interaction with the actual robot is kind of this, okay, what do I do with my own programming?
Yeah. Or something like Elita, Battle Angel,
Where it's both in one character,
it's both, where they were a teenager trying to, well, more like a child coming to terms with what they are.
Yeah.
And like coming into themselves of like, okay, what am I going to do with my life now that I know what I am?
Yep.
So it's yeah.
When they tour with the idea of like knowing I am a robot and knowing that I have this set place in society that I don't necessarily want to be in, that's always been an interesting one too. And I think that was part of what they did with iRobot, and just that idea of like, okay, I have emotions, I know how you view me, but that is not how I view myself.
Right. And that kind of ties in with Bicentennial Man too. It was like they were trying to take him down to,
no, you're just an appliance.
you're just a robot. Yeah.
Yeah.
And he was fighting to become a human.
It was like that idea of the robot uprising.
Yeah.
Is something that they always do, and it was like Dragon Ball Z. We see it with like 17 and 18, basically wiping out all of humanity across the planet, and just like, no, this is our planet now. If you survive, good for you. We'll see how tomorrow goes for you. But it was never this like guaranteed thing. Same thing with like Transformers. That was their whole concern. It's like, okay, sure, the Autobots seem nice, but what if the Autobots are just as bad as the Decepticons and they try to take over the planet? How do we prepare ourselves for that worst case scenario? Or Baymax flipping off from medical to ninja, and it's just like, oh no, he's out here to hurt people. Or Terminators, like the actual uprising and taking over, and it's like humans are still around, but they're kind of lucky that they're surviving at this point.
Yeah. Well, that does kind of bring up another point, though. Is how often do we see it where it's this collaboration between humans and robots? Where either in a mech storyline or kind of a Jarvis scenario where it's the robot is really helping, Jarvis is helping Tony control the suit. But at the same time, the suit is not Jarvis and the suit is not Tony. It's this collaboration between the two.
Yeah. And then when Jarvis ends up coming out of being an AI, becomes a robot himself. Where he, like, it's not even Jarvis anymore, it's Vision.
Right.
Which is funny because that's the way he mentions it too. He's like, I'm not Ultron, I'm not Jarvis, I am something new.
Yep.
And it was a sentience there that he had to learn who he was as well.
Yeah.
He was a lot quicker at it than a lot of other robots because he's super smart.
Well, and it also, like, at least in the movies, with having the Soul Stone is also, like, kind of that...
Mind Stone.
Or Mind Stone, yes, thank you. It was just a very different thought process than just a pure AI trying to figure things out, which is what Ultron was running into, is just like, okay, this is the place I was given. I'm just this robot life form, and they look down on me, but I'm not okay with being where I am.
Right, yeah.
Yep.
And he had a mission and he misinterpreted it. So...
Yeah, and I guess that's another thing that's interesting, is the idea is like giving the robot the mission, but the way that they interpret the mission being very different than what it was. That's I guess tied back into like the Dragon Ball Z when we were watching that, is like Android 17 and 18 was like, okay, well, I mean, we'll kill Goku, but we're going to do what we want to do until we find him.
Right.
If we find him, cool. We'll kill him and then move on with our lives. But until then, don't really care. We'll see what happens.
Yeah.
So it's like taking that mindset. It's like, I'll do what you told me to do, but I'll do it on my terms.
Yeah. I was going to say, it's also kind of interesting to think about, like, if you give a robot a singular mission of do this without all the other things around it, like, it's like metadata, where it's like, you have to go, okay, this is the mission, and here are all the different facets of the mission that, hone in on what the actual mission is.
Well, and like
Yep.
things could get thrown off too. Like with Terminator, for example, if the Terminator was sent back to the past to destroy someone, and they get back to that timeline, and this timeline was different, that person died in a car crash, where they're just sitting there like with this primary objective of kill, and the target that it was supposed to be focused on is gone. So what's going to happen now? Are they just going to go on a rampage and start killing everyone? Or are they just going to stand there like, where is target?
Yeah. Find a new hobby. Acquiring hobby.
It's just, you can do whatever you want, right? Stay on target.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then going complete opposite way of things is like the movie Robots, where they actually have sentience and they know who they are, they know what they're meant for, but they can live their life however they want.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like there are certain ones that are made for dishwashing, but they can at the end, like especially at the end of the movie, they're like, okay, now I can break off those chains and be whatever I want to be. Mm-hmm. I can be an inventor. I can be a whatever you want to be.
Yeah.
It's almost like just a normal human at that point. Like
Pretty
they have
much,
their
yeah.
job, they're 8 to 5, and then they go on about their life, and it's like, okay, cool. What do I do in the evening?
Yeah.
I don't want to just sit in that closet until it's time to wash dishes again. So
Gotta plug in for the night.
Yeah. Kind of pulling a Bender. Bender Rodriguez, nothing else.
Wasn't one of the names of the characters Bender?
Well, I was thinking Futurama.
Oh, okay. All right.
in
Got it.
Futurama, Bender was like just a bending robot, and his purpose was bending.
Yes.
And his name was Bender.
All right. I knew I
Real
heard the name
imaginative, that
somewhere. Oh, man.
Well, it's fun to see like what else has taken the inspiration from that robot thing, whether it be like Pacific Rim that we'd previously talked about with that tie-in with robots versus monsters, which who doesn't want to see something like
Right?
that?
Just come on. Mechs.
Yeah.
Mechs are awesome.
Then also just seeing it branch off into like TV shows, comic books, anime, video games, whatever. And just this branch was like the number of shows that have had some sort of robotic aspect added into it, even if it's just one character like tweaking themselves, like Cyborg in DC. Or then we've got Frankie in One Piece and Android 17 and 18 in DBZ. It's like there's always this like the robot character, and even like looking at Star Wars, for example, how often is it that the droids are some of the favorite characters?
Of course,
And it's
yeah.
like, sure, looking at the sequels especially, like
BB-8
everyone's like,
was awesome.
BB-8's great. BD-1 is pretty funny. And then it's just like, Kylo Ren is another good character, but then it's like, but BB-8.
Yeah.
And then you think about someone like Darth Vader, who is both.
Yeah.
And even Luke was some sort of both.
Somewhat.
Well, that idea
He
of
had
like,
the hand.
there's always this mindset of like, the future is robots, whether that be replacing limbs and or organs or
Yeah.
or entire
whatever.
bodies like
entire
Robocop.
bodies, like yeah, like that, like the idea of robots or robotics is like kind of what a lot of people think everything is moving towards.
Yeah. And I think with something like Robocop and or Elita, where they definitely have their like if they have prosthetic limbs, or with Robocop it was basically a prosthetic body. So like fighting kind of who you are as a human and as a robot, like figuring out which one wins over. I like kind of that dichotomy of that, of like, yes, I'm human, but I have programming.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it's also like the idea of like the personality behind it as well, because there's like there's those storylines where it's like the personality of that person is so strong, it doesn't matter what you're doing to them or like what kind of robot they are, or even what their programming is, they're going to be themselves.
Yeah.
And or it's like they come back and they like maybe have a program of like what Robocop is like there to fight crime, but it's always that mindset of like, no, I'm going to go after the people that were after my family. And so it's still that like alternate goal behind the robot mindset.
So, I mean, we've got these categories where you have robots augmenting people, where you have robots versus people, And then you have people versus people with by using robots. So I mean, stuff like Evangelion, or we mentioned it earlier in a previous episode, Pacific Rim, Armored Core, myriad storylines.
And tying into even like anime like Gundam, for example, where we have these like pilots that the robots can't do anything without the pilot, but they are these mass weapons that not anybody that you can't just get Joe Schmo off the street and have him pilot it.
Right,
Like it takes legitimate skill.
Especially things like Pacific Rim, where you have to have two that that link up right.
Yeah, that one is especially an interesting one, having to like the whole neural link
At
mindset.
least two.
At least two, yeah.
True,
Because there was the one with
there
the
was
three.
The triplets.
The triplets, yeah. The Wei Tank trio.
Yep.
Yeah.
And Thundercloud formation. Yep, that's the one. But yeah, like that mindset of like the neural load, being able to survive it. And that was something that they kind of touched on with Gundam Wing, one of the older Gundam series, which I know that's not a movie, but it still ties in. Is like
Iron Blood Orphans was a movie and a show and a series.
Iron Blood Orphans was a series.
could've sworn
Gundam
they
Wing,
made a movie.
Gundam Wing was a movie and series.
Oh, okay, never mind. Sorry.
Well, even in Gundam Wing and in Iron Blood Orphans, it was this like in Gundam Wing, they had these Gundams that it took a very heavy load on the pilot, and so there was only like 3 total people in the universe that could pilot these 3 Gundams. And so it was like they were always required to be there, and they were always working together. It's like, we don't agree, we don't have the same goals, we don't even have the same plans, but we're the only people that can do this.
Yeah.
And then even looking at Iron Blood Orphans, where they had this surgery on their spines, where they connected to the robot through this like implant in their spine. And it was like, most people die from that. Some people can get through it and survive the surgery, and it causes them to be able to react with their reactions and not a delay of, okay, I react by moving this control and then the Gundam moves. It's this more like seamless, like, oh, bam, I need to dodge, and it's dodging as they're thinking that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then you get the ones that go crazy, like Dr. Octopus. Robot arms.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Yeah, the robot took over. Yeah, you're right.
One thing I was thinking about too was kind of in a more realistic thing of if this ever kind of comes across is how robots and stuff can be hacked.
Oh, so like Ghost in the Shell?
Like Ghost in the Shell, one I was thinking of was actually Bloodshot with Vin Diesel.
Not seen it.
So I saw it once a while ago, and he was basically made up of nanobots. Like he had died, and they brought him back using nanobots, and so they hacked him, altered his memory, and basically made him a weapon to kind of like Robocop, where it was just like, you have a mission and you're gonna do it no matter what.
Yeah.
And it was almost like they shut him off to be able to do it, you know? So it's just a thought of like, in this day and age with all the technology we have, if things were able to go that far of having
nanites
or prosthetic limbs and stuff like that, those things can be hacked.
That makes me think of the scene from Kingsman Golden Circle when he uses his watch to hack into the robot arm and just starts moving it, making him hit himself. And, yeah.
Or even Spider-Man No Way Home, when Doc Ock
yeah, that's true.
took the nanites, and then Spider-Man was like, nope. Sorry, you're not gonna fight me now.
Yeah.
Because now I have control.
Yeah. That's true. And like, I feel like that's something that you don't really think about. And like, if we look at like Pacific Rim as an example, if someone had hacked into a Jaeger when 2 pilots were in there and just like started controlling it, that would be a nightmare.
Well, I think in that scenario, it kind of begs the question, like, would a hacker be able to remotely control as even half of a pilot or a piloting team?
Yeah, that's a fair point, because if we're looking at it from the perspective of the pilots, and there's not like necessarily a robotic or AI type thing running it, it's just specifically the pilots controlling it. But that also raises the question, would you be able to somehow hack into the neural link?
Which is all the more terrifying.
Yeah, because then you're directly hacking into a human's brain, and
which
causing all kinds of issues.
which kind of brings it full circle back to the idea of Ghost in the Shell, where the entire concept is, hang on, did this person actually commit this crime on their own, or were they being controlled by someone else who broke into them?
Yeah.
Who implanted these thoughts?
Yep. That's pretty crazy thoughts. Glad we're not there yet.
Yeah, thank goodness.
But movies are awesome that can depict those kinds of
I
things.
will say, I'm not opposed to some robotic knees and ankles, so I don't pop walking up the stairs every day like I do currently.
Yeah, I always told my wife that I'd be if I ever lost a limb, I would I would spare no expense to get a robotic limb.
It's not no expense, except with IT.
Well, yeah.
Yeah, and I'm one of those guys who keeps a gun next to the toaster in case it makes a funny sound.
You paranoid? No.
No.
But this sounds like a fun time to dive into our game for this week. Those of you who listened to the Monster episode, it's a similar game where we're going to draw two different robots from a cup and just see how, just kind of speculate on what that fight would be like.
Yeah.
Who would win?
All right.
Gotta jangle the cup a little.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Jingle, jangle.
All right. The second one's being a little difficult with me. All right. So our first matchup, we have Robocop with T-Rex Zord.
Oh.
Well, that's definitely a Zord win there. Robocop is good, but he ain't beating a T-Rex Zord. I'm sorry.
Yeah, team of pilots versus one guy who is cybernetically augmented. Yeah, no.
He could potentially come up with a plan and take out the pilot, but it would not be an easy plan.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, okay, small argument on that. If he had some kind of like jet boots or something like that, he could fly up and
yeah, but it's still an armored cockpit, so it's not going to be an easy thing to get into.
of course not.
I'd still put my money
Give
on
it to T-Rex.
Yeah.
Winner, T-Rex. Zord.
The next round is Starscream from Transformers versus Baymax.
Starscream.
I don't know.
I don't know, actually.
I don't
It
know.
would actually be really tough because the martial arts is obviously not going to do squat to Starscream.
Well, I was about to
But
say,
the other
does
thing-
Baymax have a roll of tape?
Well, if they manage to control the nanobots from Big Hero 6, then that's something that would do a serious number on
Starscream.
and like Baymax is more than capable of doing so.
Yeah, and he can lift 1,000 times
Yeah.
his
Something like that.
weight or something, or
I don't remember the
something
exact
like that.
numbers,
Yeah, but how much of that is taken up by his armor?
well, that it's part of him, so he would probably be able to lift
No,
more.
it's not. It's added to him.
It's added to him, but
It doesn't augment him.
I would suggest, just like an Iron Man thing, it makes him stronger, so he would probably be able to lift even
Okay.
more.
Well, because without the armor, it's just an inflatable suit on an exoskeleton.
Right.
So it's like the inflatable suit's not going to be able to lift a whole lot.
Yeah, and his innards are made out of titanium alloy or something like that.
Yeah.
So he's fairly indestructible,
Yeah.
but he also
I will
can
say,
be
like,
pumped.
Starscream would be really tough for Baymax because he transforms into a jet and like he's going to have a lot more speed than Baymax. And he's going to have the firepower.
I think even in the suit, he's going to have, even if Baymax were in his suit with the boosters on, Starscream would still have the speed advantage.
That's what I'm thinking.
Yeah.
Because like the jet.
The maneuverability, though, might be a little bit
That might be closer.
closer.
Well,
Yeah,
but there's also the times that we've seen Starscream transform into the Transformer mode, like to kind of change direction and then transform back into the jet going
Right.
the opposite
True.
direction. So it's
Yeah.
like he has
maneuverability.
a lot
yes.
of maneuverability. He has the speed. He has the weaponry, both
And the
on,
cunning.
like, in jet form and with his like the weapons that he uses in like Transformer form. And he's got the cunning. So I agree. I think I'm gonna have to go
Starscream?
with Starscream.
Okay. I can agree. I do have slight arguments here and there, but I can definitely
hear 'em.
concede.
Let's hear him.
Well, I mean, not specific arguments, more just I like Baymax. So
I like Baymax.
I like T-Rex
too.
too. I
Star-
like him more
yeah.
than Starscream.
I like
but-
both of them.
I like
quite a bit.
Baymax too. Like he's a fun character, and that's a great movie. But like, Starscream is a literal robot built for war. So.
Yeah, like I said, I definitely concede to that. So on to our next fight. This is actually a really good one. Droidica versus Elita.
Droidicas are the ones that roll, right?
Yeah,
The
they're the ones.
shields,
with
yeah.
Ooh.
But
They
Elita
aren't very
is
maneuverable. That's the one thing that I'll say. Like, if they get into like a corner or a hallway with the amount of firepower that they're putting down that hallway, it would be really tough. But Elita is just so much more maneuverable.
maneuverable and
intelligent. Like Droidicas
Yeah.
are kind of dumb.
Well, that and also, doesn't Elita have... can't she heat her blade? I'm trying to remember.
So the blade that she took from the other character,
Yeah, kind of the roller derby type thing. Or rollerball, pardon. But yeah.
it wasn't him. It was one of the other. Was it? What are they called? Shadow Warriors or something like that.
I don't remember.
I forget what they're called, but it was the one that had like the full metal.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah, and just basically had a skin face.
Yep, I remember now.
So the sword that he had was, it was made out of this particular kind of metal that could cut through anything.
That's right.
I don't-
Steals his blade, yeah.
I don't necessarily know if it would cut through the
think it
shield.
would cut through the shield because the shield can stop a lightsaber.
Right.
So I
But she
don't-
might be able to pass through it and then attack.
Yeah,
the
like, and
inside.
that would definitely be something because that was
With
kind
her
of a
final
trick that
form?
they used. They didn't really demonstrate it in the movies, but in the Clone Wars TV show, like Anakin and Ahsoka would like roll or slide through the barrier and then activate the lightsaber to get it to hit the
Right.
Droidicas. So yeah, like she'd be able to get through the shield pretty easily. So as much as I love Droidicas, I definitely have to give this one to Elita.
I agree.
Agreed.
On that one, like, I guess, why don't you guys explain a little bit more about Elita? Because that one's one I haven't had the opportunity to see. I'm going to watch it soon because our lovely host Dan has lent that to me. So that is on the docket very soon. But
Yeah. And I will say that is probably one of the most faithful anime adaptations that we've seen so far. I hope to see more like it.
Yeah. And me as a anime noob, as we've established, this movie I absolutely loved. Like, I know coming from the Eternal Movie Optimist, like that doesn't say much, but it was very well done for me.
And as a former movie critic, I will point out that as a standalone film, even if you were not aware, this would be pretty highly rated. It's good cinematography, it's good storytelling. It's, if not, the pacing is a little odd.
Yeah.
But I think that's considering it's trying to adapt the source material very well.
Yeah.
Which it did.
this is
Very
one of those
well.
few movies that I don't hear negative things from people. Regardless of what like circle of people I'm talking to, out of the people that have seen it, I personally have never heard anyone say anything negative about it. Everyone I know has always talked really positively about it, whether that be knowing the source material and enjoying it, or not even being familiar with it, just enjoying the movie as a whole.
Or just knowing that Christopher Waltz is in it.
That's enough to get your attention. Let's be real. He is fantastic. So
He is.
So, Dan, what are some of your favorite robot movies? Because we've kind of gone around and just talking about a variety of robot movies, but what are some of your favorites?
I mean, definitely the Transformer movies, as a whole, definitely are on the top list, top of the list. It's kind of hard to say just because it's not a genre that I gravitate towards necessarily, but it's every time I've seen one, I've overall loved it. Like, I think iRobot is up on the list. Mm-hmm. And because I'm a Disney fanatic, I love Big Hero 6.
Big Hero 6 is
I would
very
have
good.
to say
Even,
I
that
will
one
agree.
is-
Big Hero 6 is a good one.
Yeah.
like, we even have David agreeing with us on that, and he is the anti-Disney person over here, so that alone says how good that movie is. But like the robot genre is always interesting. I will say that like while I've seen several robot movies, I do tend to steer more towards robot stuff in the anime world.
Yeah.
And more so than the movies. Like again, I love Transformers. That's something that I've grown up with and will always watch. And then also like Big Hero 6 and whatnot, iRobot. But like it does seem like it tends to get my attention a little bit more so within the anime scope and video game scope for that matter. Than movies. Like I don't dislike movies with robots, but like I do think that anime tends to be the one that catches my attention more.
I was gonna say, kind of going on your mention of video games, just as a slight touch on video games. Horizon Zero Dawn is a pretty great, robot adaptation.
It's such a good storyline, and especially with it being like the robots being the animals.
Yeah,
and those kind of like taking over.
It kind of goes on that Beast Wars thing too.
Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah,
a little bit. Yeah, it's a different take on the robot apocalypse storyline, but it's such a good take on that.
And the fact that they're not all evil.
Yeah,
is great.
Yeah. Well, and I think like something that's interesting about like the gaming realm as far as robots are concerned is like it can do things that you can't really do in other genres. Like for example, if we look at Cyberpunk, you had the ability to like customize and upgrade yourself, and you could even choose to be like a melee style where you have this like mantis upgrade where the swords are popping out of your arms and that's how you're fighting, and then you can like bring them back in. And so there's always this like the video game genre can do so much with the robots that you can't see in the movies and even anime industry. Like the anime can get closer because it's animated, and so there's not as restricted. But like even with I remember when the first Transformers movie came out, the complaints I heard the most was how clunky the transformations looked. I was like, well, that's technically true to form from the old cartoons and stuff. Like they added that aspect of it's a lot of moving parts connecting. So,
and I feel like they kind of ruined that in the later movie where they made it more of a nanobot kind of thing.
Well,
where it was very liquid of like it could just kind of form.
Because of that was like story driven, but even in the first Transformers movie, when you look at it, you see the first time Optimus transforms was very slow moving, and throughout the movie, the transform seems to get quicker and quicker every time it's done.
See, I think what they did in that one more so was they made it a specific, specific times where they did it slow, because they were trying to make a point of like powerful robot transformer. Like the first time Optimus does it, like that is a moment.
Yeah, it's a
they wanted to slow it down
and
make it something that you remember. Whereas the other transformations, it was like, okay, they're transforming, but it's not as big of a moment.
Yeah, and at that point, we've also seen all of them transform a couple different times. So it's like, okay, we can only see this so many times before. I was like, man, you could have shaved like 10 minutes off of this movie just with that.
And that's why when they do like the quick changes of like when they're doing a chase scene, it's like, yeah, they can do it that quick. It's just they want to make sure.
That was one thing that upset me a little bit with the Transformers movies. We didn't see like the partial transformations like we did in the cartoons, because it's like times it was like Optimus is just driving down the highway in truck form, and all of a sudden he like transforms a part of it where he reaches his arm out and scoops someone up and brings them in and transforms back and keeps going. Like you don't really get to see that.
I think the most you see that is with Starscream, because he kind of does, like you said, he does the partial.
He does the like transform where he like breaks his speed in the air, like, and then transforms back going.
Well, we did see it with we saw it with one of them in the first one where he's a truck and he's trying to get a tighter turn.
Oh, Ironhide.
Yeah. Oh yeah, he kind of sticks his foot out, right?
Yeah, sticks his foot or his arm out or whatever. It slams it into a pylon or something, grabs hold and keeps going full speed just to turn.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's the only way you'll see a truck make that kind of turn.
Yep. They, I think they did do it a couple of other times when like they were flying through the air and like he would.
Well, it was mostly the flying aspects. Like the one with Ironhide was like the one except like the one main exception I can think of. But like flying through the air, like that one makes sense. You're using that to change direction in a very quick time frame. But like with scooping people up or like something like that from the cartoons, you don't really see that.
Well, no, that's what I was saying is like when like they were falling off a bridge or something. I think Bumblebee did it where like he did the transform, grabbed him, and then transformed back.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, like that's different. Like what I'm talking about is just a partial transformation where it's like you just stick out the arm. Like the point that David brought up with Ironhide, that's the only one I can think of.
Right. Okay. Yeah, that makes sense.
Where they're simultaneously taking advantage of the fact that they are a completely mobile thing, but also, hang on, they're not just that. They're also bipedal or whatever, and can kind of balance out the pros and cons of each with the other.
Yeah. All right, guys. So we're going to transition back into our game segment where we do some versus robots. So I have the first one here. It is Android 18 versus Johnny 5.
Android 18.
Android 18.
Android 18. Yeah.
Johnny 5 is fun, but Android
No
18.
disassemble. Please, no disassemble.
Major input.
It's like anytime it's an DBZ option, I'm going to select it. Let's just be real. The next one is actually kind of an interesting show off. It is Iron Giant versus the Egg Drones from Sonic.
Ooh. Yeah. That could definitely be interesting. I think the only thing I would give an edge to Iron Giant for is he could pluck him out of the air and just crush him in there, and crush him in his hand.
But they're also like they can just they have a lot more range, I think, especially with like some of the drones that we got to see in the second Sonic movie. Either whether it be lasers or missiles or whatever, like he has armaments that he can send out, but I don't think he has armaments to the extent that just a fleet of egg drones would have necessarily. So like, yeah, that's a tough one. I personally think I'm gonna go with the egg drones on this one.
Yeah, I would probably. I don't know. I've actually not seen the Sonic movies yet, so. But considering what I recall from the games, toss up.
I think it is a toss up for me as well. Like I said, I would give it just that slight edge on Iron Giant, but I see where you're coming from. But I think because of how armored he is, it would, and his angry form.
Yeah,
is
they're
a bit
also like with how
more
small
powerful.
the egg drones are, like they could easily get in and get vital points or
Oh,
get
that's
some of
true.
the gems
Oh,
that,
yeah.
and he wouldn't be able to see them getting them.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah, I hadn't considered. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'll
You
concede.
changed my mind.
I'll concede.
Good point.
All right, so I pulled out Gypsy Danger versus Android 17.
Ooh.
Ooh.
Maneuverability, I feel like.
Android
17 has
because it's got the
maneuverability.
maneuverability. He can fly. He's super fast. He doesn't run out of energy, unlike Gypsy Danger and or the pilots. The energy blasts are going to do a lot more than what.
And can pierce the hole.
Yeah, he can pierce the hole. He also has the energy barrier that is mostly impenetrable. Like, yeah, it's definitely Android 17.
Yeah.
I think it.
As awesome as I think having a mecha in the top here would be, yeah, Android 17.
All right. So real quick before we end that, just so we can do Mecha versus Mecha, what about Gypsy versus Iron Giant?
Iron Giant's not really a mecha, though.
Or big giant
fine.
robot.
Fine, yes.
I would almost argue like Optimus Prime versus Gypsy Danger would be a more entertaining fight, I think.
Yeah, agreed.
Okay. All right. So that one then.
Just like with the weapons and like Optimus, like
Optimus
especially
is much smaller though.
He is.
I think he has more firepower, but he's only as big as a truck.
well, and he's also smarter than
The two pilots
the
combined.
two pilots.
Yeah.
It's like, sure, they may be in the same mindset, but I think Optimus Prime is going to have more intelligence, and his weapons are geared towards robots. Well, yeah, it's a giant robot. it's a robot.
Yeah.
And he can just go get one of the Dinobots and ride them into battle. Like,
We didn't add that in there.
we also didn't remove it. So
Yeah.
I love
very true.
Gypsy Danger, but I think I'm gonna have to go Optimus. Though that ion cannon from Gypsy would be real troublesome.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
I may have changed my mind with just talking about that. Actually,
Well, that one takes some time to charge up, and I think Optimus could do more damage before it's fully charged.
yeah, and he's not going to stay still long enough for them to get a good hit. And since he is
Yep.
smaller than Gypsy,
And he can
it would
fly.
be a difficult target.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Optimus?
I
Optimus.
think so.
Okay. All right.
Yep.
All right, well, I guess that wraps up our episode, but we did want to throw out another game to you guys out at home. We're going to do the same thing we did previously in the Monster episode, where we grab the winners and ask you guys who you think would win in these fights. So the first one being T-Rex Zord versus Starscream, Android 18 versus Elita, and Android 17 versus Egg Drones.
I think that one's a little one-sided.
We had to go with the winners. So.
We did.
Yeah, we did.
And also let us know if there's any robots that we didn't get to in this game that you would like to see in a fight. Similar to what we did with the monsters, just give us a little bit of a fan battle, so to speak.
Absolutely.
Yep. But on that note, I think we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And just remember, in case of an AI uprising, doesn't hurt to be polite to your digital assistant.